Sawabanane family, we see you, we honor you, and we value you. Your gifts, along with God's grace, allow us to persevere, to mentor, and prepare new leaders as we co-create for future generations. The Proctor Conference is where future meets legacy. We are committed to the forward crusade of faith, equity, and reparatory justice, nationally and globally. We are the place where Ubuntu becomes reality. Your gifts to the Legacy Campaign enables our success, our sustainability, and secures the future. With vision, by faith, and through action, we are the Proctor Conference.
I'm so grateful that there is in this world something called the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. You've been on the wall doing the work. Sister Iva Carruthers and so many others, you represent the best of our faith. You represent the faith of the Black church, the conscience of the American churches. Thank you for the work that you do.
Family, the time has come to work the roots. The roots of Samuel DeWitt Proctor, Gardner C. Taylor, Pauli Murray, Bayard Rustin, and the list continues. As the mission of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference continues to shape our ethos and worldview. Join us today by committing an annual, one-time, or recurring gift to the SDPC Legacy Campaign. We pray that you and your loved ones have been and will remain the benefactors of God's grace and mercy. Thank you.
Proctor family, happy holidays. We just wanted to remind you that registration for the 2022 Samuel DeWitt Proctor Clergy and Lay Leadership Conference is still open. We are getting ready to gather around the theme, envisioning something new. Can you see it? Please plan to join us virtually February 19th through the 26th. You can go to our website, sdpconference.info, to learn more about the conference and to lock in your tickets today. Please register soon for the best available rates. We hope you have a happy and safe and healthy and blessed holiday season, and we hope to see you in February for the 2022 Samuel DeWitt Proctor Clergy and Lay Leadership Conference.
I keep fighting voices in my head that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Oh, remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I'm held when I'm falling short, and when I don't belong, you say that I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say to me. Oh, I believe. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. Oh, God. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Yeah. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I'm falling short. And when I don't belong, you tell me I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. Oh God, I'm laying it down. You have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. Hey, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I feel I am weak. You say that I am held when I'm falling short. And when I don't belong, you tell me I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say to me. I believe, oh, I believe. I believe what you say to me. I believe. Ooh, I believe. I see me how God sees me, so I believe. Ooh, yes.
My name is Charles Strait, and I'm the pastor of the Faith United Methodist Church in Dalton, Illinois. I am also a person living and thriving with HIV for the past 34 years, and I am grateful to have this opportunity to share with you today. Let's pray. Eternal and loving God, my soul pleads for mercy. My heart is saddened by the stigma and discrimination that surrounds me. That not only surrounds me, but persons living with and affected by and at risk for HIV all over the world. God, we know that in you, the source of strength that we need to be able to continue this journey, telling and showing the world what's possible, even in the midst of pandemic and disease. God, I pray that you would continue to lift those who are struggling, to heal those who are not in a good and safe and whole place. But not only us, not only those of us who are impacted by HIV, but God, for those who have the power to spend the money that it takes to cure this disease, for those who have pulpits and microphones who are able to speak out and speak up for those of us living with HIV. God, for those who are not even thinking about those who are impacted, I pray that your spirit will move in their hearts and minds so that together we can overcome this disease. Together we can heal our country, our families, our world. God, we ask these things in your mighty and matchless name. Amen. Thank you.
Good evening, Proctor family. Welcome to the Murray-Rustin Social Justice Institute Rainbow Table Talk series. We're so glad you're here for this second conversation centered around the theme, Disclosing HIV/AIDS. Our song this evening was brought by Opal Staples, who is a professional singer You've heard her on Oprah on Sunday's Best, on the Proctor Prayer Demic, if you are tuning into that every week. We are so thankful for her graceful spirit and her love for God. So we just want to give thanks to Opal for being a part of the program this evening. On our panel this evening, we have Reverend Dr. Oveta Fuller. She is an associate professor of microbiology and immunology in the medical school and faculty in the STEM initiative of the African Studies Center at the University of Michigan. She is an adjunct professor at Payne Theological Seminary and an ordained itinerant elder and former pastor of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. During the 2020 global emergence of SARS coronavirus 2, Dr. Fuller engaged heavily as a trusted resource for transferring science-based insights to community. And we are so thankful that Dr. Oveta Fuller is a member of Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference Bioethics Commission, and you will hear from her this evening. We will also hear from Esther Ross, who serves as the Vulnerable Populations Coordinator at the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. As a Region 10 Network Coordinator, Esther organized the first ever advocacy team in Eastern North Carolina. She is the trainer of the National Minority AIDS Council, building leaders of color and growing leadership opportunities for women. And through all of these roles, she has received funding for intervention that she has developed called LAMPS, Leaders Advocating, Mentoring, Personal Growth, and Support. This project empowers people of color living with HIV/AIDS who are 50 plus with leadership skills to build mentorship teams, to mentor other people living with HIV, to become meaningfully involved and engaged in HIV science delivery systems, infrastructures that impact their quality of life, and supports to ending the HIV epidemic in Eastern North Carolina. We also welcome Mr. Tony Wafford, the president and CEO of I Choose Life Foundation, an organization founded to address health inequities in the Black community. Tony works tirelessly in partnership with social, civic, faith institutions, elected officials, community-based organizations, national and local leadership on issues of health literacy, inequalities, and on policies that affect the African American community. Tony's major accomplishment is his ability to address inequalities and policy from a culturally competent perspective. Because of his unique approach, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and I Choose Life Foundation have been working in partnership for the past 10 years on the Act Against AIDS Leadership Initiative. And one of the things that Tony is most proud of is being instrumental in the convening the Cost and Casualties of Silence African American AIDS Summit, the largest summit addressing HIV/AIDS in Black America. We also welcome our moderator, who got his doctorate in ministry in interfaith theology from the New Seminary, where he was also ordained as an interfaith minister. He lectures across the country at various seminaries, and he serves in several capacities at the St. Paul Community Baptist Church. Family, we welcome our panelists and we welcome our moderator, the Reverend Dr. Michael Elam.
Grand risings again, Sabonani, we see you, we honor you, we value you. You are important to us. Namaste, the divinity in me salutes the divinity in you. Welcome to Rainbow Table Talk. This is our second session of Rainbow Table Talk, and I'm excited to be here. And I'm excited about our panel and our conversation today, this evening, regarding a very serious topic that we all need to have a discussion on. We have such an esteemed panel of experts, and they are all around us, and they're at this virtual table, and they have expertise in various areas. And so I wanted to begin, this is an organic conversation, a roundtable discussion about the topic of HIV/AIDS in our community. I want to start with Tony because it's not just, it is HIV and this is our conversation, but it's still at the top of the list in terms of health inequities in the Black community. And so as we suffer, we're at the #1 in a lot of infectious diseases and cancers and things like that. So, you know, it's part of this overall part of this conversation. How do we engage in this? How do we talk to our communities about the inequities, our health inequities?
Hey, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'd like to thank Jeremiah Wright, who's on here also, who's been extremely helpful with me and going across the country and speaking to other pastors. I was fortunate enough for him to come down to Memphis and talk to a group of pastors. And just when I able to drop his name, when I talk to other ministers, it helps me in my work. But getting back to your question, I think one of the things that we have to do, again, let me rewind the tape too. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I'm working right now with several clinics here in LA. And it seems to be that somehow we seem to have forgotten that it's still a problem for Black people. I work every day with brothers and sisters who are still living under the freeway, who still living in vacant cars. A couple of people that I know that actually zero converted from negative to HIV positive just to get housing through and just to get, you know, and seeing every day people in the parking lot selling their meds. And I think, again, when the dominant society quits talking about it, we seem to think that it's gone away. It's no longer a problem, but it's still a problem for us. And I appreciate you guys having this conversation. One of the things that we do, that I try to do, is go in the community and have honest adult conversations with folk, because this is a tough topic, but unless and until we actually talk to each other as adults and hit it head on and straight on, we're going to continue to have this problem. And I think we have to create our own unique logic and language of how we approach it, because unfortunately, the same thing that works here in LA and West Hollywood don't work in South Central. And we can only do that when we approach it from our own unique way of how we deal with and how we talk about it. And again, I think if we spend more time, what I try to do is spend more time, one, just being correct and honestly going in places like barbershops and things like that, and have an honest conversation with brothers, and not so much trying to be politically correct, but be correct, not being mean-spirited, because again, we have to challenge each other, step out of our comfort zone. That, I think, once we start doing that, we can start to turn the tide, I believe.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And Esther, do you mind calling me Esther? Esther, join us in this conversation, because although I have in the early days, because I'm a 60s child, so I remember the pandemic, the epidemic that occurred. But I also wasn't necessarily part of that community. I lived in the burbs, so I didn't always have access. I didn't always come into the city. I didn't always hang around, you know, in the village, or like I knew about the village. I didn't hang around the village. You know, there are conversations I've just not been a part of. But it seems like in our community, particularly in New York City, that conversation is not taking place. And yet, in places that seem to be in rural areas, it seems the numbers are different, or a different kind of conversation, or a different kind of conversation. There's one conversation in the urban areas, and that's what Tony says. We're not having these conversations because it seems like it's over, but at the same time, it's an urban area and there are resources. But in the rural areas, we see the numbers are rising significantly. Can you talk about that, you know, based upon your experience?
Certainly. I want to thank this panel for asking me to come and talk about this very important issue. So I have the unique blessing of doing this community in this community of HIV from New York. and bringing it to North Carolina. And like you said, it is different. It's very different. New York, there's abundance of resources that's available for individuals living with HIV. You can get employment, you can get housing, if you need assistance with food. The other thing is that you can access health insurance, which is so important to pay for, especially as we age. So coming to New York, to North Carolina, I've been here for about 22 years. The social determinants of health impact our Black population on an insurmountable level, meaning that if they can't even get housing, if they can't find a job, if they can't get food, if they can't even for just minor health concerns and don't have the infrastructure or Medicaid, because Medicaid was not passed in North Carolina. So, it wasn't expanded here. So if they don't have access to insurance so that they can take care of themselves, that's why the numbers are so different here in the South than it is in an urban area, because there's so many other things that is much more important for individuals. That, when you talk about a person's lifestyle, if the basic needs, housing, food, water, all those kind of things, if that's not taken care of, how can you reduce the disparities that's occurring among Black people in the South? And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share that, because it's very different. It is very different, and it's causing not only amongst HIV, we are among diabetes, heart disease. Black people in the South are experiencing those health inequities on a much deeper level than any other racial population.
Dr. Fuller, the same question. How do we, we're having this conversation about the disparities, our health disparities and health inequities, and how do we get our community re-talking about it? I think there are some churches that used to have, World AIDS Day, and that seems to be diminishing to a certain extent in our communities. And I know you have some expertise in that area. Let's join in on a conversation on that, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mike, and thank the organizers for inviting us to have this very important conversation. As my colleagues have said, HIV has not gone anywhere. As a matter of fact, because of the attention necessarily on COVID for survival, many of the things that were helping to move HIV forward or diminish it or to reach the goals that have been set have been put on the side burner. And so it is not gone away. If anything, it is the COVID pandemic has unveiled a whole host of disparities, and some of the reasons for those disparities that go way back into the legacy of this country. And so HIV has not gone away. And we who know that are still responsible. I think the bio said that I am also a minister, and I know that Hosea 4:6 scripture that says, "My people perish for lack of knowing." And then we forget the rest of it, which says, "I hold you priests responsible." So I am as a minister and as a microbiologist, I do what's called a trusted messenger intervention, which is using networks of religious leaders and other networks. So it could be Omega Psi-Phi, or it could be any network where people have influence and can reach to their families, where we talk about what is HIV. It's just a virus, just like COVID is just a virus, just like flu is just a virus, just like chickenpox it's just a virus. I teach the seminary course called Health Matters to clergy, saying to them, it is your responsibility not only to deal with the spirituality of your congregants, but also their physical and mental well-being. And if you look at the Black community right now, HIV and many other disparities are there. So I'm very grateful for the I Choose Life initiative that I just learned about. And we actually were hosted by someone who has an I Choose Life program or grant, I believe, community grant for COVID work. So we have so much to do, and hopefully COVID has helped, and the other anti-Blackness pandemic have helped to reveal how much work we have to do. HIV is just a virus, and we need to treat it as such and help people who are dealing with this virus, just like we help people who are dealing with diabetes or people who are dealing with heart disease or COPD. And unfortunately, we don't always do that.
I've been recently, one of my mentors, Dr. Maladova Patrice Sommet, recently passed last week. And so I've done some work with him. And then I'm also reading this book called Divining the Self by Velma Love. And both talk about alignment. And what does that mean, alignment? It's, the alignment of the body, the mind, and the spirit. And I think when I went through the training with Dr. Sommet, I realized that how much I was unaligned, that I can get really good with spirit. The mind, because I went to seminary, I started really working on the mind, but the body was problematic. And it's, I think sometimes the Christian tradition has, and as I've studied, the Christian tradition really talks about, is really anti-body. And I think that reverberates in our community. And it's the mind, the body, and the spirit. And we're good on spirit. Let's not focus too much on the mind, and the body is a problem. So how, is that unalignment in our community of really affecting our health disparities? Do we really honor our bodies? And then Black bodies are traumatized. Let's be clear, Black bodies are traumatized. And I think that plays a role in that too. You will work to death. And our bodies, as one pastor said, we have a problem with our bodies because our bodies betrayed us, because they didn't bring us here for our minds. They didn't bring us here for our spirits. How do we, because I think this is all connected, how do we have that conversation about the alignment of the body, mind, and spirit to move forward and gathering and working us together and dealing with that, with all, not just HIV, but all the health disparities in our community?
If one of the things that I've noticed that's been very effective is I'm a social worker at heart, meeting people where they're at. Once you meet a person where they're at, you'll be surprised how much information that you can pour into them and you learn from them. Because I believe every person has that ability to really take care of themselves and really solve their own problems. What's happened is we've disconnected because we're not even having a conversation on just a much just personal level, like breaking bread with each other. And you could do so many things when you get with people and start to eat and talk with them, or just cook. Somebody bring a potluck. That's one of the things that I started to do. Bring a potluck. Who wants to bring some macaroni salad? Who wants to bring some fruit? And then once you get together and have a conversation, then you start learning where people are at and what they need. And once you do that, then you can start with educating or empowering, because I don't like that education word. I believe empower.
Mm-hmm.
Give the person that knowledge so that they can be able and the support that they need so that they'll be able to stand on their own 2 feet. For example, you know, I was diagnosed in 1993. I was told that I would be my mother was told, you know, she's not going to be here. She'll be dead in 3 months by a doctor. Well, I was addicted to drugs. You know, I was 99 pounds. My viral load was in the millions. I had no T cell count. So at that time, you know, the medications was very expensive. And the doctors told my mother, you know, it doesn't make, you know, she's using it, it's not worth it. Just make arrangements for her to die peacefully and just let her go. Thank God for a social worker that spoke life into me and said, you know, you look like a fighter. You look like one. And she dared me, if you a fighter, then I dare you to find out the real information about HIV. Because I was always surrounded with the negative. You disgusting, you know, heard it from the church, you sin, that's why you got it. It's some kind of sin you had, and that's why you got it. And for years I kept that type of mentality. It was until someone met me where I was at and said, you know, Esther, you know, what do you want to do? I didn't know that I went to drugs because, you know, I have abuse in my family. I have mental illness. And I went to drugs to try to take care of that because it was a taboo word in my family. Don't you leave, don't you tell anything that's going on in this household. Don't you dare share that Aunt Mommy, Aunt Margaret and them have depression or they anti-psychotic. You don't share that. So I used to try to take care of my mental illness, and all of that did was just compound the issue. So the social worker was able to meet me where I was at and said, what, Esther, do you want to do? And I said, I can't get these voices to stop saying stuff in my head. She said, okay, so we're going to deal with that. And then she said, well, once I accomplish that, now what is it you want to do? I want to learn how to stop using drugs. So then she worked on that. After those 2 things, she supported me through those 2 things. Then she was able to talk to me about my body and HIV. And she dared me. She said, listen, go find out about HIV, the true, if the facts. And then I want you to come back and share that with a group. And before you know it, I went back, found out the accurate information about it, and went back, and then she hired me internally to be a peer educator in the mental health facility I was in. So she met me where I was at. It takes time. And I think a lot of times we done bought into this microwave thing where we want stuff quick, and making a relationship and rapport with people is not going to be a quick. It's not going to be quick because there's so many different layers that people are experiencing, and to get that to make a valuable impact in someone's life is going to take time.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story. I think that is so important. In sharing this particular information, the story, and you're right. You have to meet people where they're at. And one of the things that the heading of our conversation is about disclosing. And I remember in my experiences, I had someone, and also the evolution of medication. So there's two things that happened: was disclosure and the evolution of medication. The first person was an advocate, so we already knew what his status was, and to sit with him at the kitchen table and to watch him. It was ministering to me to watch him struggle through his medications, because they were just bottles and bottles and bottles, and to watch him take deep breaths and to see the tears in his eyes as he has to, this new lifestyle that he has and he has to do. And he's been doing it for a while, but still facing that reality. And that was a teaching moment for me. That was a teaching lesson for me. And then to have, and the other end of the spectrum, as far as disclosing, a friend of mine had a small party. He had a small dinner party. We all came over, and he is mid-50s. He had passed the major, when there was really the major epidemic, when friends and families and funerals were ever all the time. And he remembers those things. And he had this dinner party, and he disclosed to us that at this dinner party, and what bravery it was for him to do that. And yet we kind of celebrated. Not that he was sad, we celebrated that there's hope. We celebrated he was able to tell his truth at that moment. We celebrated he trusted us to disclose that information. And we prayed and gave thanks that the health remedies or the medications that he has to take now was nowhere near the 20, 30 plus pills they had to take 20, 30 years ago. And so, telling the truth, speaking your truth and disclosing it, and not facing any type, not trying to face any type of stigmatization and stuff like that. I think that those are just two important lessons that I've learned in my connection to this, were those two levels of disclosure and medication. If anyone would speak upon how important this, especially meeting people where they are, and the ability to understand disclosure and how to help a community, how to help a person disclose.
One of the things that I talk about all the time, I think is really important, is take the test, tell the truth, and take the mess. And I think what we have to do is get all hands on deck. One of the things that have frustrated me over the years, and I agree with you, Sister Esther, meeting people where they are, and we also have to take some time to win the person, because unless you win the person, you'll never get to the point. But if and I think what we have to do, what frustrates me, is we don't have all hands on deck. I'm a heterosexual man, got 5 kids, 3 girls, 2 boys. I had to have honest conversation with my girls early on. And this was challenging, because I had 3 young girls that I know were sexually active. So I had to actually talk to them, show them how to open up a condom, tell them, look, if y'all, because I know they was getting their funky on. There's no question in my mind. It was handling their business. But so I had a choice. I said, I'm gonna tell these girls I say, look, y'all need to have your own condoms if you're gonna be doing this. Because as a guy, I was walking around with a condom for 2 years before I was doing anything, because I just had to show everybody I was cool and frank in front, like I was doing something when I wasn't busting skin on a grape in a fruit fight. So what I had to do is tell them, actually, that was a joke. Y'all can laugh and smile, right? Okay.
I haven't heard that one before.
Y'all get a little too serious over there for me.
That's a new one on me.
This is like conversation. So anyway, I had to tell them you got to use your condom, you got to open it up, you got to put it on. And I explained this to them because, again, as a young man, and this was before HIV, when I would bite it, you bite it, tear open it, right? I would tear a little hole in the reservoir. So when you put it on tight and you having sex, first thing it do is bust. Well, and this was crazy, but I had to tell my daughters the reality of what people do, because I could either be silent and go to a funeral, or my baby's zero convert, become HIV positive, or I can open up and speak the truth about what I did. So I know I'm not the only one. And I had to have these conversations with their little boyfriends that come over. I said, look, yo, man, let me holler at you. I don't know what you off into. I don't know if you like boys, girls, or both, or whatever you into. It ain't none of my business. All I'm saying is you need to give my baby an option. You need to be transparent what you're doing, because if you cause some problems, I'm not calling my lawyer because I ain't got one. We're gonna do something else. You know what I mean? And that's the part I believe of the honest conversation. And I think where we fail miserably is I hate when I go to meetings and I'm the only heterosexual Black guy in the room. There's other brothers that care. I ain't by myself. It's other brothers that care about Black people. Because when I got an HIV, I had to ask myself, Tony, do you like all Black people or a certain group of Black people? You like what you call so-called straight Black people, or do you like? And again, that goes back to what I said: create our own language and our own logic. Did we come up with the word homophobic, or did somebody else come up with that and we start repeating? You know what I mean? And again, unless we take our own way of how we address it, because again, I can't speak enough about how it breaks my heart here in LA, West Hollywood. They get Wolfgang Puck meals if HIV positive delivered to you. You get housing. If you're in South Central, you can't get a Happy Meal. That's a problem for me, and that's a problem for most Black people. If in fact you come out, and we can have unity and diversity. We ain't got to agree on everything. Me and my wife don't agree on everything, but we ain't getting no divorce tomorrow. You know what I mean? So we can have to struggle with each other. And that's a good thing. But until we open the tent to everybody, why can't everybody come? Everybody actually talk about their fears, things that they don't understand. And I'm gonna just be raw with it. A lot of times we don't want to deal with, in terms of a lot of heterosexual Black men, because we don't want to talk about some of the things that we engaged in and did. Like it's a rare person in their youth as a young boy discovering your sexuality. You ain't humped your brother, your cousin, or something like. Because you discover your sexuality, that don't necessarily mean you homosexual. But nobody really has the courage to say that, right? I'm the only one. What's happening? But when we do that, it's when we actually get to know each other and understand the difference between a gay person, a pedophile. Because what we do is we lump everybody in the same pile, and that's insane. And the only reason you do that because we don't talk about it. It'd be as crazy as you telling me to babysit your granddaughter, and because I'm heterosexual, that I'm gonna do something to her. Well, that's not gonna happen. It's no more different than if a gay cat and he's your friend. You tell him to watch your son until you go to the store. He ain't gonna do nothing to your son. He's gay, ain't a pedophile. But those are the conversations that we have to have and be passionate. We got to close the door. Preachers, excuse me. Call each other a bunch of MFs and whatever else that we got to do, and then come out the room as a united front of Black people, ready to rescue and reconstruct Black people. That's my position.
Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for
my
sharing.
Passion. I get a little excited.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you for your passion. I think it's so right. I think one of the things in my experience, and I belong to a 12-step recovery program at my church. And they, and it's one of the things that, we didn't sugarcoat anything. It was about truth telling. It was what it was. You are where you are. And if you say you want to get recovered and you went out and smoked or shot up the night before, come and tell us. There's no judgment. I think what happens is this is a space of no judgment. And so when you have the disclosures of what all the types of addictions or whatever's going on in a person's life, it's not pretty. And so we have to stop, prettifying it. Somebody, I had to eulogize one of the members, and somebody wrote in her, she joined church. I was like, she hated church. She joined this particular church, but she really hated church. And tell the truth, and tell the truth and shame the devil. And she was, and I felt that she allowed me to tell the truth tastefully, but tell the truth about her life and her existence. No, she didn't always like church. No, she did walk the streets. Yes, she did all these other things. And I think that what happens is that people stand back by that because they're afraid, because it's always about, as we talked about last month, for our community, it's always about performance.
Mike, but would you argue sometimes it ain't gonna be tastefully, man? Because guess what? Pain ain't tastefully. You can't deliver a painful message in a tasteful kind of way. People, let me testify. I think one of the biggest things that hurt me early on, I was introduced to sex too damn early. You know, people, I'm seeing these magazines, I'm seeing videotapes my older brother that was showing, and that I got twisted. I ain't gonna even front. I got twisted when it came to sex and sexuality in terms of what I should be doing. But I had no place to go where I could be honest about what was going on. Fortunately for me, I wasn't that destructive, but we don't even talk about the destructive nature of sex in terms of introduction too quickly, because it's okay. If you're a man, okay, you're a player. You done knocked off all these women. You know, let me, next time when you get one, throw me one, Tony, or can I watch? These are hard conversations that we got to have, because unless we correct that, unless we create a brotherhood and a sisterhood where we can just be butt naked honest with each other and not worry about a subject and verb agreeing and all of other stuff. Because again, I think Esther was so correct. Because if you meet people where they are, then they get, it's just like I think it was George Washington Carver said, in terms of how much he loved nature. If you love something enough, it'll tell you its secrets. If we love each other enough and be honest with each other, we'll find out all of those secrets. And as I say in the 12-step program, you're only as sick as your secrets.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Fuller, I've done some reading, and I think maybe you could help me as someone who as microbiologist, correct? Yes. The similarities and the differences between the pandemics, the HIV pandemic and the COVID pandemic, because there's some people who are making these comparisons that there was silence at the beginning of both, and yet there's this change in COVID, and then there's no change in HIV, and we get vaccines within months, and we get medications we don't have, there's a shot now, what, twice a month or something like that, but there's no cure, there's no, so how do, I think you could speak upon that.
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about what was being said, and I was thinking, you asked about the body. The body is the housing of the spirit and the rest of us in the mind. And what HIV is a tiny virus. I have pictures that I can show you if you like, but it's a virus. It doesn't care what kind of sex you have. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how much money you have. It's just like coronavirus is trying to reproduce itself to survive, because if it doesn't do that, it's going to go extinct. And so what happens is sexual intercourse, whatever kind it is, gives the virus the opportunity to move from one person to another in the few fluids, body fluids that it can survive in. What are they? Blood, semen, vaginal fluid, and breast milk. It can't survive in saliva. It can't survive in sweat. It can't survive in tears. And that's because the structure is this little fragile virus inside a fat droplet, really. And so it doesn't care who we are. When you do IV drugs, whether it's for insulin or whether it's for crack cocaine or whatever it's for, the point is that the blood that's on that needle can protect HIV long enough to get it from one person to another. So the virus is not thinking about that. We as humans, unfortunately, judged HIV because when it first showed up in this country, it was from homosexual men, gay men. And so we judged it right then. But I'm going to show you something, and I think I hope I get my technology working here. Can you see this map over here? Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So you know what? HIV might have started with people who are gay, but look at where it is now. This is just the AIDS view map, and you can see the colors here show that overall HIV is hugging the South and in California. And then if I filter this, I got to move this out of the way. If I filter this for race, watch what happens now. And this is what Esther was just saying. I'm going to say, where are the people who are of African-American heritage, who are Black, who have HIV? And this is cases per 100,000 people. So watch this. Look what happened.
Oh my God.
It's the South and the Northeast. And that's exactly what Esther was saying. And how did that happen? Well, that happened because once this little tiny virus with this little lipid container And I'm going to get back to your question about what happened with HIV versus COVID. They're both causing worldwide pandemics. But once it got into the Black community and have you all seen the Endgame AIDS in Black America, where it talks about the progression of AIDS and how it got into the community when drug paraphernalia was made illegal. So then crack cocaine houses came about so that people didn't have to carry around this material in their cars and get busted. But when you go to a place that supplies the drugs and supplies the needles and you're high, you share the needles. When you share needles, what do you share?
Blood.
You share blood. And so that then moved it into the Black community as well as the laws. And you follow the laws and follow the money, you follow the anti-Blackness. When people who had a little bit of crack cocaine got caught, where did they go? They went to prison, right? Now, these brothers, when they came out with or without HIV, they engaged with the sisters. And so we ended up with HIV in the Black community in ways that go along with the fact that we have been disenfranchised from the power to make laws in this country and the power to control things. That's really how it got so into our community. The virus doesn't care who you are. The virus does not care. It's just a little virus. And the reason that it is so hard to get rid of is, unlike COVID or coronavirus, which you get it, and if you get symptoms, they show up right away. With HIV, the virus can get in your body, and Esther knows this, I'm sure. It can sit there in your own genetic material and do nothing for years. And over time, it can activate and begin to destroy your immune system, which is why it's called acquired immune deficiency syndrome. It can be from 6 months to 5 years before you even know that it's there. But by the time you know, your system is not working anymore. And so that's why it's so hard that we have vaccines against coronavirus, because it doesn't change as much as HIV does. And because HIV can hide in the body, even if we make immunity to HIV, if we have a host defense that can box it out, that virus will change so quickly and go and hide inside of our cells that the immune system can't see it. It becomes a stealth virus, if you know what I mean. So we can't see it. So it's really difficult to do the same things that we've been doing with COVID. And yet both of them are highly transmissible, and both of them cause serious disease, and both of them affect disproportionately people of color because of the legacy of economics and other things in this country. But we've got to change that. I heard somebody say about empowering people. I believe you don't give them fish, you teach them how to be fishermen, so that if you understand it, then you can share with somebody else in a way that they understand. And yes, meet them where they are and be authentic and be honest and be non-judgmental, because that's what it's going to take to teach people how to avoid these viruses, or if they get them, to know that that's not a death sentence. Today, we have antivirals called TAP, or treatment as prevention, or PrEP or PEP. These things are antivirals that will stop HIV to keep us from progressing to AIDS. And I know people here know about that. So HIV is no longer a death sentence. If we follow what we know, it can be a manageable disease like diabetes or hypertension. But we got to do what we got to do.
Can I add just one thing to that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think excellent, Dr. Fuller, I agree with you 1,000%. I think with other thing that we got to do is, we talk about all these disease states. Interesting, diseases mutate. We keep doing the same damn thing. We gotta change too. We gotta change the way we approach these things. We gotta broaden our perspective. We gotta reach out. And I agree, giving folk fish and teaching them how to fish, we gotta do it. But sometimes we gotta do both and.
Absolutely.
Because again, what with PrEP and PEP, all that's good, but that don't do you no good if you're living on the freeway. It don't do you no good if you got medication, you ain't got a medicine cabinet. And I think that's where, again, when we look at the dominant society and how well that they're doing, And I use that, I really mean white people, so just in case you don't know what I'm talking about. You know, our situation is different. Our situation is different because again, I can't speak enough about the brothers and sisters I'm dealing with. That's homeless, man.
That's right.
That's that's squatting in houses. That's HIV positive. It's still a major. I'm seeing people dying of AIDS, and for some reason they don't even want to say AIDS no more, as if it's gone somewhere. When I first started doing this work, we were dealing with people that were HIV positive and crack cocaine. Then when white people started smoking meth like it was going out of their style, then all of a sudden all the money everything went to meth. Negroes were still smoking crack. They still somebody smoking as I'm talking to y'all. So we actually have to, it's up to us to take back this conversation because the gay white man, he got a whole different agenda now. HIV for him is a political thing. Just get everybody accept how he doing, what he doing. And again, we have to be even more, rescue me if I'm wrong, somebody. We even have to be more cautious with PrEP because some people, as white people, been taking PrEP a long time. It's not new. I'm sure you know that, Doug. And what we have to watch is that people don't use PrEP as an excuse to have sex without conscience.
Absolutely. And
that's also a conversation that we gotta have.
And that's not a conversation that I've been having, or I'm not having that conversation about PrEP. Particularly my generation, I've not sat down with somebody to have a conversation about PrEP. Now, maybe it's my fault, because I do know somebody who takes PrEP, but I never have about PrEP. But what, explain to me PrEP. Whatever I need to know about PrEP. What do I need to know about PrEP? Because I've never talked to my doctor about it. I know about it, but I don't know anything really. I just know what I heard.
All right, let's do this. We're going to do this another way, okay? So I'm going to show you something. So first of all, here's the virus, and I'm going to make this as quick as I can. This is the virus that causes HIV. And what I wanted you to know is that this little fatty lipid thing around it is like the fat that at the top of chicken when you cook it, like, chicken broth. It's very easy to dry out. That's why HIV can only be transmitted in a few ways. But here's if you get virus in your body, it makes a lot. It just makes a lot of them. But here's what I want to show you. HIV, we talk about PrEP. They're like, you ask me, well, how is it different from COVID? Well, HIV has 3 phases mainly, and they can go on for years. I think Esther told us that she was diagnosed many, many years ago. And so what we see is that when we first get exposed, so let's say I went down to Payne Seminary, and while I was there, I slept with somebody and I got HIV, right? So the virus enters my body, it goes up, and this is over months. My T cell, and Esther mentioned T cell levels and viral loads. Those are the 2 things that tell us how well a person is doing. When you first get infected, your body recovers because you've got lots of T cells. But over time, and then you go into years, these T cells get destroyed because that's what the virus reproduces in. That's what this picture is. These are viruses, this is cells, and these are viruses. This is a dead cell, this is a living cell. And I told you HIV hides away in our genetic material. COVID can't do that. COVID can't even get in the nucleus, but HIV can get in there and hide away and just sit there indefinitely. So anything we have out here from our immune system can't get to it. And when it does reactivate, it destroys the lymph nodes. Those, when you get a cold or flu or something, you feel under your neck, you have these large things under your neck that are swollen. Those are making your T cells that fight against all kinds of things. So over a period of time, the HIV is reproducing in your T cells, destroying them until it gets so low that now you can't fight off anything. You can't fight off pneumonia. You can't fight off thrush. You can't fight off a common cold. And so that's when we get to AIDS, when the T cell level drops below 200. Now you asked me about PrEP or treatment. The antiviral drugs, which stop the red line, stop the virus from growing, actually pushes us back over to this side where we keep the T cells high and the virus down. And that means you don't get these opportunistic infections. Is that right, Esther?
Yes.
You don't get over here because your immune system stays well. And so the thing about PrEP is that you give the drugs to people who have HIV, and that keeps them over on this side of this graph, so they don't get to AIDS in the asymptomatic clinical well-being phase. But if they have partners, at least one partner who they usually have sex with, and you give the drug to that partner also, if by chance that person is making some HIV and it gets transmitted in semen or vaginal fluid, then it can't take hold in the body because the drug is already there. And so that's why, for example, where I work a lot in Southern Africa, a couple where one's HIV positive and the other one is not. And what if they want to have children, right? You know, in many African cultures, having children or not having children is not a good thing. Having children in any culture, it should be. Having children is a good thing, right? Because if we don't have children, what's going to happen?
Right.
We become extinct. But if you want to have children, what transmits the seed to have children also can transmit HIV. And so giving both of those people the antiviral drugs will stop one transmitting HIV. And that's why PrEP is so important. And it's important whether you're under the bridge in LA homeless, or whether you're a walking person in the African American or any other community with HIV that you don't want to give to somebody else. And so we have made progress, but we're not where we should be or need to be. And I will say that because the Black community has, I don't want to say ignored, because there are people like Tony and Esther and many of us that have been working on HIV, but because we have not done what we could do with what we had, people are still not using what's available. And so we still have it in our communities, and we've got to stop that. We've got to get smart and use what is already available.
I wanted to bring up 2 points that came up in the discussion, and thank you, Dr. Fuller. One is, I'm HIV positive. I share my status because I asked God, if he saved my life, that he can use me in whatever fashion that he saw fit. And because of that, I share for 2 reasons. To let people know, no, you don't die from this. That's right. And God through, because the body and the spirit and the mind is all one, it's all together. And, and I share that because it's people that I've come across that was in worse state than I was. And they were told that they were going to die. And intervention occurred where they got on the medication, and now they flourishing. So I told y'all I had no T cell count, viral in the millions. Well, I got on this good medication, and I have undetectable viral load, less than 20. My CD4, my T cells is 954. So I wanted to share some about U equals U. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but U equals U means untransmittable. Undetectable is untransmittable. If I can get my virus down to undetectable, less than 20, for 6 months or more, I'm not able to transmit HIV to anyone.
That's great. I'd never heard that.
The other piece is, in order for me to become as vocal as I am, it takes some work and it takes support. A lot of people, the stigma is real. It's one thing to say, I'm coming on this platform, and because I'm HIV positive, everybody else needs to disclose. No. Some people, it's really is between life or death. They may be in a situation that if anybody find out, it could be very well their life. So what it is to support an individual. I tell nobody to share. I have a support group. We've been having a support group for over 10 years. And what I do is I invite the community and people living with HIV and with other issues to come and join together. And we talk about health issues. What can you do to improve your health? And we talk about HIV, we talk about other things. And I'm gonna tell you, something happened within that. Once I shared who I was and they got comfortable, I shared my truth. People started sharing. I didn't even ask them to do that. Now they share when we go and advocate at the legislators, because I don't know if y'all know about it, but they do have programs in place to help people living with HIV for housing. Well, the housing opportunities for people with HIV in North Carolina, they were counting dead people. Dead people. People are not dying from AIDS anymore. So instead of them counting the people that are living, they was counting dead people. So it was less money coming into the community to provide housing. So the power of, now see, from one person, they started going up there to advocate, to let them know, no, you don't need to be counting dead people. You need to count living people. And now that's how we got to increase funding in North Carolina for housing opportunities for people living with HIV, living, not dying, not dead, living. So that support, and me coming from New York, me going through my journey, all of those things, you need support. And I really like what Dr. Fuller said. You know, this disease don't care who you are. It really don't care. It don't care what kind of sex you, really, that ain't my business. My business is, do you know about HIV? Do you know about all the other things that you can get? Let's do it. You don't know? Okay, let me tell you. All right. Do you know how to protect yourself? If you do. Oh, you don't know? Okay, let me tell you. Let me show you. And by that, I'm not getting into, because the stigma is real, and that judgment piece is so, it is preventing our people from coming forward and linking into care in North Carolina. It is ridiculous that we have so many people that are, now I work for the state. Caucasians becoming diagnosed with HIV is going down. Guess what population is going up?
I know.
Yes.
It's our people of color. Now we got the 25 to 34-year-olds.
Yep.
Now we got the 44 to 50-year-olds. And now that people are living longer with HIV, like Dr. Fuller explained, this thing is living in you for years, and you not knowing until your immune system starts getting weak. And then you go get a test. And you get a test. Now we got older people, 55 and older, that are being diagnosed with AIDS. They not going from HIV, they being diagnosed with AIDS. There's a problem there. We're not supporting them. We're more focused on who they having sex with than let me try to talk to you. I love you as because I'm a minister as well. I love you as my brother and sister. You know,
Yeah.
so what can I do to help you so that you can flourish and so that we can help one another? And then, you know, you don't keep it to yourself. You help somebody else. Not the way I do it, but in a way that's comfortable for you. You know, and I'm, you know, I'm in the 12-step program. That's how I got started in this spiritual walk. Because for years I was on, you know, not being connected because of how the stigmatized I was in the church. But I'm gonna tell you, I got a spiritual connection with God that is so deep. I know that I'm his daughter. I know I'm his daughter because he done kept me. But guess what? I know that he got sons and daughters other than me that's out here. But a lot of people don't know that. Who are going to tell them that? Who are going to tell them that God loves you so much that he just waiting for you. He just waiting for you to ask him and to come in and he will guide your life. See, people are suffering mentally, physically, and most importantly, spiritually. And we so focused on the outside, but we can't get in because we're not even coming to them at a point of love. You know, we got funding, some of the funding for COVID, because I also have a nonprofit. I'm part of a nonprofit called Circle Friends. And we got money for COVID. We ended up going and feeding people, not only giving them masks or giving them the supply. Listen, what medications do you need? Because in North Carolina, they have co-pays that's ridiculous. Co-pays ridiculous, their rent, all of these things is impacting them. Once you meet a person where they're at, then you can help them get to the next level. And we're doing it backwards. We're really doing it, and we're doing it a disservice to individuals, because if we talk about we want to get them to some wholeness spiritually, then we can't fall, because you know, I don't mean to say it like this, but we don't ask people to talk about erectile dysfunction. We don't ask people to talk about that. That's not so. You don't go around disclosing that. You don't go around and talk about vaginal dryness.
We don't talk about it. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of interconnection and all that. So I'm getting some. The producer's giving me the signs. Oh,
okay.
Okay. But I do have two questions. And then by the time we answer these questions, if there's anybody out there who would like to ask a question, we do have a Q&A option on this program. So if you have a question, please post a question. I'll read your question as we wind down. But I have two questions, and one is a personal question, and one is a ministerial question. The personal question is, I'm gonna ask them both, and everybody can respond. But my question, my personal question is, throughout my history of disclosures of people, do compromised immune systems play an effect play a role in HIV infections? And the second question is, what could the church do? And I'm thinking, instead of isolating this and this and this, can we just talk about healthcare in our communities without segregating it, but also being specifically also attacking all of it? Because I think it is all connected. It is all connected. So my question, those are the two questions that I have.
Dr. Mike, they're all connected. They're all connected. The body is the housing of the spirit, right? And we as clergy are assigned to talk, to help people with the spirit, but you can't separate the two because the spirit is housed in the body. So yes, you're absolutely right. What I think has happened over the last 2 years when we've seen an aerosolized virus pandemic, which means it goes through the air. Nobody can judge you for breathing, right?
Right.
You might be judged for not wearing a mask or not getting the vaccine, which we shouldn't judge anybody, but you won't be judged for breathing. But that COVID virus now can affect everybody. And the other pandemic is the anti-Blackness, the legacy of systemic anti-Blackness that was unveiled, racism in America from the historical perspective of a culture who thought they were dominant and thought they could do anything with their laws and their rules, whatever. And so what this has done is revealed so many underlying roots of the disparities, from diabetes and diet and lack of exercise and sexually transmitted disease and other diseases, because of the economics and of the living conditions and the stress in the body, the legacy of stress in the body. So we cannot disconnect these things. And if we take anything out of the COVID pandemic, which affects 3 times more people, Black folks die from COVID than your average white person or Asian person. Why is that? That's because of so many social economical things. And that's what we need to tackle. That's what we as all people, whether you are working from Tony's perspective or working from my colleague Esther's perspective or working from teaching students like me or preaching from the pulpit like others, that's what we need to tackle so we can change those. Follow the money and you'll find out where the disparities are. And so that's why I say it's all connected. And each of us works on our own piece, but it all gets to the same issue in the long run.
And so as we're having this conversation, what strikes me is that one question that even though there's a lot, even though it exists, but that's a conversation we need. The anti-Blackness conversation is what we really need to have, because it is rooted in our, this is what as ministers, as a church, we always talk about, waving our hand, giving the praise, but we're not really having this conversation about the anti-Blackness that is embedded in our daily living experiences.
Not only from the other culture, but from ourselves.
Well, from ourselves, right? From ourselves. We have this anti-Blackness, anti-Blackness for our own selves. One of the people who disclosed to me, he was out there and he would really have these. We were very close. We had these conversations, and I had this infection. I was like, and then then he goes, it comes back 6 months later. I had this, and I was like, what? What are you doing? And this anti-Blackness, anti-bodiness. So when he finally discloses HIV status, I'm like, well, then there's a 180. Then there's a 180 in terms of lifestyle, in terms of how they saw themselves, and now successful in certain areas of their expertise. It is just remarkable to me, but I think that all plays a role in all of these things. And I think that we really need certain churches, we need to have this stop this escapism theology and really engage in this anti-Blackness or pro-Blackness and pro-body, pro-self, and really engage in these conversations. It's a sad state of affairs when the Proud Boys goes into school to fight against critical race theory, but Black parents don't go to school to fight against the lies that they're teaching their children. Because that's where
if they allow to go to school, some of them are not I'm in student debt. Do I believe God is going to help me? Yes, because for me going to get my bachelor's and master's degree in social work and human services, counseling, but all of it is intertwined. But you know, the piece that is on a regular basis from all the work that I've done in this field, it's the lack of support. One thing about the 12-step program, they support one another. You know, they come together. I remember, you know, when my mother died and my mother she was in the hospital, she was in New York. I had to come back and forth to North Carolina. They went and visit my mom until I was able to go back and be with her. That kind of support. I was able to get assistance from one of them just to make sure that I was able to go back and forth, because the job I had, I couldn't go and travel back and forth to New York on a regular basis. But because of the support that I got from others, I was able to do that. And it's a lot to say that we got all the information, we got the science, we got everything in place, but the one thing is, you know, how we're treating people, how we engaging them, how we talking to them. Because one of the things that I learned, I don't know if you've heard of the term cultural sensitivity. Well, it's cultural responsiveness, because sometimes if we don't evaluate ourselves, we become the problem instead of being part of the solution, because of the way we talk to others and we don't engage a person's strength. We come as a authoritarian, or like, I'm the one that knows best, so you need to listen to me. And that pushes people away. And that's not engaged. That's not community engagement. That's not individual engagement. That's not civic engagement.
That's right.
It does not work.
I'm getting the red flag again.
Oh, okay. You only get red flags when
I get a red flag. Think of this as the view. The producers like waving their hands. But I do have one question, and we're going to be closing soon. From one of our attendees, I don't know who can answer this question. Is there a test that can detect HIV while the disease is sheltered in the cell?
Yes, there is. Yeah. So what happens with HIV is when we get it, that first little part, we get antibodies. And what the tests do, as a matter of fact, the only way you can know for sure you got HIV is to get an HIV test. And that's why we say everybody who gets any kind of health care, wherever you get it, should get a HIV test every year, just to say you know what your status is. If you're negative, you know what to do to stay negative. If you're positive, you know what to do to stay away from AIDS. Yeah. So that the antibodies, once the virus gets in your body, it's going to leave a footprint, and that's what we detect in the test. And so, yes, you don't have to get AIDS to know you are HIV. Everybody who's HIV does not have AIDS, as we've heard tonight. And that's so important. And we can change those things. As churches and clergy and people, we can say, go get your HIV test. When I counsel I do premarital counseling, I require that they get an HIV test and they tell each other the results. Yeah, so we can incorporate these things. And the last thing I'm going to say, because I know we're going to have to stop, is I believe that in many ways, COVID is here to help the church, and this is the Samuel Proctor Conference sponsored, to help the church get back on course, because we were so busy worshiping, so busy doing this and that, that we lost sight of Christ and what he did and how he loved people and met people where they were and dealt with where they were. And we're being called back. We've been pulled out of our buildings, pulled out of our rituals, pulled out of our this and that to say, what's really worship in spirit and truth? And how were we shown to love one another and love God first? And I truly believe that's what COVID is all about.
Yes, I think there are many lessons that COVID has taught, particularly taught me and taught the rest of us, that, you know, there are a lot of us, you know, in dealing with COVID, there's been a change in lifestyle. There's been a change in our spending habits. There's been a change in how we see each other. There's been a change in how we communicate. I mean, look, we're communicating like
we
this.
wouldn't have been able to do this.
No, we didn't even thought of Zoom. We had to do everything else. Like, how do we meet? How do we get flight arrangements?
We fly to
click, and we're all here, right? So, any last words for our community? Hold on, I do have another question coming up. Hold on. Oh no, that's a thank you to the answer to the question about taking the test, getting tested on a regular basis, just like you go to your doctor and get all kind of blood tests.
You get cholesterol tests.
Cholesterol tests. It's just added to the list. Add that to the list. Add that to the list. And if you don't have proper, if you don't have a healthcare professional, go to a testing site get an HIV.
Because whether you know it's there, if it's there and you don't know it, you're essentially not able to fight it. If you have to know it's there,
early
you're just
stages.
saying, "Hey, here, knock me out." But if you know, you can do something.
You know that you know that you know that you know. So, any other last comments that we have for this evening? Tony?
Well, I'd like to, again, thank you guys. I really appreciate this conversation. And it is my sincere hope and prayer that this is the beginning of a movement, not an episodic moment. I think when we come together like this, I think that we need to drill down tough and talk about hard conversations. And we need to talk about possibility and not dwell on the pathology. And I think it's up to us to create the good world that we all want and deserve to live in. Again, I thank you guys. I really appreciate having this conversation with you guys.
Well, yes, thank you so much for participating in this conversation. Thank you so much for participating in Rainbow Table Talk. This is an initiative created by the Murray-Rustin Social Justice Institute, Murray-Rustin Social Justice Institute, or Mrs. JI, and I'm really grateful for that. We will definitely have continued conversation on this topic over the next couple of months, and hopefully to have more people who are able to have maybe a whole conversation on disclosure. What does that look like in 2022? And so I am happy, and as one of our founders says, Reverend Dr. Frederick D. Haynes III. I'm peacock proud and elephant glad that we were able to have this conversation and share. I think I got something else coming up in there's one more question, and then we can close. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Is there an entity or organization that I can associate with to facilitate the education about this program?
I actually grew up in North Carolina, but I live in Michigan now. So maybe our colleague Esther knows more about South Carolina at this point. I think many clergy organizations should be dealing with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Alistair Matthews from Wake Forest University, she would know because there was some funding that was provided to South Carolina as North Carolina to do some work with the clergy to reduce stigma around HIV and AIDS.
And I'll say anyone who wants to work with getting true information to networks of people, clergy or whomever, I put my email in the chat, and that's what we do. We try to get what we know to people in partnership, not saying we can come in and solve, but we can give a little piece of the puzzle so you can use what you know and the resources you have to tackle the specific problem in your area that may be different in LA than it is in Texas, in New York and Michigan. It has to be relevant to where we are. So I think it's going to take all of us to say no more. Our community is not going to be the last in terms of care. And we have to stop and reduce these disparities.
If I could say one thing, I appreciate that. It's going to take people living with HIV as well as medical professionals, everyone, all hands on deck. Everyone needs to get involved with this. This is not something that we could just like separate, but engage the person living with HIV, engage the social workers, engage the diabetes, the endocrinologists. We need to involve everyone in this fight because we can't do it separately, but together we can do all things. All things can come together when we work together.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for this evening. It's been informational. I've enjoyed this conversation. Reverend Tony Wafford, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Reverend Esther Ross.
Only part you messed up on said Reverend. I'm not a preacher.
Oh, okay. Tony Wafford.
I told a guy once I would be a preacher, but I'm afraid I'm trying to get to heaven.
I think we need somebody who goes to the left. You know what I'm saying? and Esther Ross and Dr. Oveta Fuller, we thank you so much for participating in this Rainbow Table Talk discussion, and I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. And for all those who are watching us, we ask that this is a product, this is a ministry, this is an offshoot, this is the work of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, and we continue to do this work based upon your investments in this ministry. The Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, I've been familiar with the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference since 2005, when I was in seminary, wet behind the ears, and just in awe of all the speakers and all the people who were at this conference and the conversations that we had. Even back then, it was about sex and sexuality and theology, and even those conversations. And then to be a part of this family and to do this kind of work. This is the work the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. This is the work that I'm part of that work that this conference has invested in. So if you invest in this conference, you can give certain numerous ways through Giveify, and just go to the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference website, and you can invest in this ministry, whether it's $5, $10, $2, $50, $200. We'll take $2,000 if you got it. But we just appreciate the work and appreciate this kind of work that we do at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. And we do this work because the community invests. All hands on deck. All hands on deck. So if you can, just give to our organization willingly. You could do it one time or do it as on a monthly basis. It would be greatly appreciated. So we can continue to do this work. We can continue to have Rainbow Table Talk. We continue to do social justice. We continue to do, help our community with anti-Blackness. We continue to educate our community that God loves us just the way we are. God loves us the way we are, where we are, and that we love ourselves. What is it, loving thy neighbor as well as thyself. And we have to learn to love ourselves so we can love our neighbor even better. And so once again, thank you for everybody who participated in this Rainbow Table. I look forward to seeing you again in the not too distant future for another conversation on Rainbow Table Talk. So all minds and hearts are clear. Gracious God, we thank you for truth telling and truth saying. We thank you that you are a we kind of God, an our God, an our Father, an our God, that you love us. You love us. You are the great creator. You created the trees, the leaves, the fleas, these we's, the us, and the our. We give you thanks for the knowledge that was pressed upon us this evening. We thank you for the participants and their wisdom and their experience and their life stories and how they are helping our community get better and providing resources. We thank you because God, you move when we move. We thank you for the yes in this room. We thank you for the yes at this table. We thank you for the yes in the participants. For without a yes, we couldn't move forward. And we thank you, Lord. We thank you. We thank you. In the name of the sable-skinned Savior, the nappy-headed Christ, the brown-skinned Palestinian Jew from Nazareth, we say amen and ashe. Have a good evening. God bless you.
Appreciate
Take care. Let me give you a big old hug, everybody. You don't mind being hugged. Give me a virtual hug. Yes, virtual hug. God bless. Take care.
Bye.